back here at the Newcastle United Media Centre in Eddie Howe's hot seat, which we like to sit in these days.
Yeah, it's
Eddie.
too windy outside.
It is very windy.
We've both done I've done my Newcastle World video outside.
Yes, I did the same, and not great conditions.
No,
but nice and warm.
We'll give you the best conditions at Newcastle United's Media Centre rather than trying outside.
Here where we've been speaking to Eddie Howe this morning ahead of Newcastle United's crucial Premier League game, as you put it, Eddie.
It's a big game.
Big game against Nottingham Forest at St James's Park. 2:00 kickoff on Sunday afternoon. I haven't got a Saturday kickoff in a while.
I know.
Hey, take them. Sunday kickoff, big game at St James's Park. Where do you want to start, Jordan?
Should we start with injuries, as we always do on this channel? Because there's a couple of, I say big ones, but I'd say there's a couple of notable things to
stuff to
discuss from the injury front.
Yeah, there's nothing necessarily new as such.
Yeah.
Like, there's no fresh injuries, as Eddie Howe put it. I mean, not that he's aware of. We'll see.
Yeah.
But in terms of 3 players are out for the Nottingham Forest game: Sven Botman, Jamal Lascelles, Joe Linton.
Yeah.
Positive news on Joe Linton. Sounds like he's possibly a week or so away.
Brighton's the talk, isn't it?
Yeah. Brighton sounds like realistic return for him. We'll miss Nottingham Forest, potentially Liverpool, which is the prognosis Eddie Howe gave initially. He said he'll miss probably the next 3 league games when he got that initial injury against Fulham. Sven Botman has missed the last 2 games, set to miss a third, potentially against Liverpool as well. What did you glean from what Eddie Howe was saying about Sven Botman? Because obviously he's a player with a history of knee injuries, and it's whenever you see a player with a knee injury and then what was initially described as a knock turns into now a 3-week injury, you worry.
Yeah, I mean, he picked it up in the Arsenal game, and then for Birmingham it was, we'll check ahead of Man City, and then, ahead of this game, he would only be back born. Well, he would be back born in a miracle this weekend. So the longer the can gets kicked down the road, you do have some fear, and I think that comes from the fact that Sven Botman's only just returned from a long-term injury. It is the opposite knee, but it's still that because he's had knee troubles before.
It's also a sense of deja vu, because the first knee injury, it was a little bit like you say, that can kick down the road, where it was like, Sven Botman, he's obviously had a big knee injury, but should be back in a few weeks or a few months. We're not quite sure. And then all of a sudden he was out with an ACL injury. And now he's picked up another one. So it was a very frustrating injury for the club and for the player to deal with. And when we were reporting it at the time, there was so much uncertainty surrounding it. And while this has been described as a knock, in Eddie Howe is keen to play down, it's nothing to do with an ACL injury, and it does sound like it's far more minor than that. We have been down this road with Sven Botman before, which is where the sort of trepidation and anxiety comes from surrounding his injury, because he's been injured before with a knee injury that was sort of played down, and all of a sudden he was out for best part of the season.
It's sort of like a big blow to him as well, because you seen in the Arsenal game when they played the 3 central defenders, so and it worked to an absolute T, and then they tried to play the 3 central defenders out of possession against Manchester City, and because they didn't have a proper centre half there, and were exposed because Kieran Trippier for the first goal was at fault. But I think none of the central defenders had a good game. I think Dan Burn was probably maybe the pick of the 3 central defenders, but just not having Botman loses the ability to be able to do that, especially when you're missing a big player in Joe Linton, because there was an update on Joe Linton as well, where I've already discussed about the hopefully being back next week, but not having him in midfield almost just like opens up a space. And they tried Joe Willock there last week, didn't work, brought off at half time. Lewis Miley comes on, and if you're asking a centre midfield if he's going to play that 3 against, I think he has to play the 3 against Nottingham Forest. I think Lewis Miley comes in for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, Eddie Howe almost rectified his changes last week at half-time, where he's made 2 changes, brought in Kieran Trippier and Joe Willock by half-time, both players off. Yeah. And then the players who come on, Tino Livramento and Lewis Miley. I thought Lewis Miley was Newcastle's best player in the second half. Best of a bad bunch, I have to say. and then Tino Livramento held his own a little bit more than Kieran Trippier did. So I think those are the two changes you make on Sunday.
I think Emil Kraft, maybe if you do want to play those three defenders and push high, but one thing with Forest is they have the ability to go long and they've got a lot of pace in behind. I say pace in behind. The two wingers are pacey. Chris Wood, they've got a striker there who was absolutely banging form. But I think we're seeing from the game changing his part last year. They can pose a real threat on the counter and being able to go direct. So I do wonder what Eddie Howe will do. But for me, I think it'll be the two at the back were Cher and Byrne, and then I think he's got to play Miley just based on what we've seen from him last week, because it's almost like over the last couple of weeks as well, Miley has gradually made himself the fourth choice midfielder by coming off the bench, starting the two FA Cup games. Joe Willox came in, hasn't impressed as a central midfielder, did all right against Bournemouth as the left winger. And Sean Longstaff is a player that has really struggled for game time since probably the back end of last year as well. So
it feels like Lewis Miley's moved above him in the pecking order when you just look at Eddie Howe's process of substitutions. Lewis Miley is coming on before Sean Longstaff, and generally in recent weeks has probably outperformed him as well when he has been on the pitch.
I think Eddie Howe's always said he gives players a chance on merit, and I think Lewis Miley probably deserves that. It wasn't his best game against Birmingham, in my opinion, but I do think, and when you're lacking a third central midfielder when Joe Linton's out, and you've got a player who came on at the last weekend and impressed, I think naturally you probably put him in. So yeah, that's my pick for the. We've discussed the team now. Usually the structure of this video is all over the place. But we've went from injuries to the team, and we're going to talk about Jamal Lascelles, I think.
Yeah, which then ties us into something else that we go on regarding player contracts as well, which is there's obvious news about there as well. Yeah, Jamal Lascelles was the third injury update we got. And a few weeks ago, Eddie Howe spoke about Jamal Lascelles being a few weeks away from almost like stepping up his recovery. Now it sounds like, well, he basically said there's been setbacks with Jamal Lascelles, and will we see him again this season? Seems to be. That's what we're asking now.
Yeah, it's it went from being back in March to we probably won't see him.
Carabao Cup final was the sort of
that
could have been the triumphant.
To be fair, before the press conference, we were talking about if Newcastle won the trophy and Jamal Lascelles was back. This was a full room discussion.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Would Jamal Lascelles have one hand of the trophy and have Bruno on the other? But anyway, he's not going to be back. When he'll be back towards the end of the season, we don't know. I mean, if you want to look at it, it could have sent Jamal Lascelles essentially might play his last game for the club. In theory,
I think he might have.
Yeah, which to go out like that would be a real shame. So we'll have to wait and see. I think maybe if he is back towards the end of the season, he might get a couple of run-outs depending on where Newcastle are on the league table. But to get new contracts, you need to play, and it's a real blow for Jamal Lascelles. I think since probably since he triggered that contract, pick up his injury like not long after.
Yeah,
it's been a horrendous spell for him, and I really do feel for him because as a captain who was, I hold Jamal Lascelles in really, really high regard of what he's done for this football club. So if he was to go out like that, I feel really sad for him.
Yeah, but it is sad.
But I don't know, Eddie Howe has always rewarded players well for being good behind the scenes, as we've seen with sort of Paul Dummett, Matt Ritchie up until the summer. So that might come into it as well. But yeah, I'm rambling here, but we just don't know when he's going to be back, and that's a concern when there's a player who was out of contract at the end of the season.
Yeah, and there's a few players out of contract at the end of the season. Jamal Lascelles is obviously the wrong side of 30, which is tough for anyone. And
just got that short.
I feel old now.
You feel old
after yesterday. So yeah, and that was part of my question, because Eddie Howe and Newcastle have signed two players in Emil Kraft now and Martin Dubravka, 36 and 30. Emil Kraft will be nearly 32 by the time his contract expires. Martin Dubravka will be 37. These are old players in football in terms. And you look at Newcastle's players out of contract, the likes of Jamal Lascelles, Fabian Schär, John Ruddy, Mark Gillespie, if you want to go down that route as well. These are older players. So I pose the question, Eddie Howe, Newcastle need to find a right balance between getting these experienced players and keeping them, but then also bringing that average age of the squad down, because a problem for Newcastle in the medium to long-term future is having a lot of players tied down and having an aging squad. I think it's already going down that direction. You look at the centre-back position, Sven Botman, who is injured and has had his well-documented injury issues, is the only player, centre-back, in the senior squad below the age of 30, which is a mad situation to be in. Newcastle need to look at that position in particular and get some youth in, which they tried to do. I say youth, but younger players in, which they tried to do. Mark Gay, there's obviously links with like Dean House and players like that, like young defenders that they'll look and explore deals for in the summer. And Eddie Howe recognised that. He said, look, we need to find that balance. Experienced players certainly have a place in the squad, but it's getting the balance between actually bringing the age of the squad down as well, which is going to be really important for Newcastle in the medium to long term.
I remember a couple of seasons ago when Eddie Howe first arrived, and he spoke about getting the average age of the squad down.
And then has offered contracts to all of the old players.
I understand the Emil Kraft one, because he is a
I understand both of them.
Yeah, the Emil Kraft one is versatile, doesn't necessarily kick up a fuss when he comes in as dependable, where he isn't an expectation there to play. The Bravka, I'm a bit surprised at, from the player's perspective, because
a month ago he was leaving.
Yeah, a month ago he was leaving. Obviously, I think it's probably a reward for sticking by the club when he could have gone, possibly.
Yeah.
But I just think from the player's perspective, in 12 months' time, something's gone wrong with Martin Dubravka starting games for Newcastle again. And that could be, look, he might be a number 2 or whatever, and someone else might come in. So I get that, but it's, I just don't get it from his point of view. Where,
well, I thought
if he's happy being number 2, that's fine. But every time we've heard Martin Dubravka speak, he's had ambitions to be a number 1.
Yeah, exactly. And the one time it was clear he wasn't going to be a number 1, he left. Which he said that probably gets held against him wrongly at times. When Nick Pope came in within a couple of months, Martin Dubravka's wanted to leave, join Manchester United, and spoke when he joined Manchester United as if his Newcastle career was over. And then 6 months later, 4 months later, he was back at the club. So yeah, it's an interesting one regarding Martin Dubravka. Interesting as well, I thought, we'll get into this, we might have to cut it, but was the wording of the contracts, of the announcements, where Emil Kraft, bearing in mind these announcements basically came at the same time. Emil Kraft, end of the 25-26 season, Martin Dubravka has signed a new contract. There was no explanation how long. Was it to the end of the season on new terms? Was it 1 year?
Wouldn't be an extension though, would it, if it was the end of the season? It would just...
No. So we understand it is to the end of the 25-26 season, but the wording of it makes me think, well, is there some sort of verbal agreement or like gentleman's agreement to be like, well, if anyone comes in for you and offers these terms, you can leave on a free transfer.
That's a good point, because I'm purely talking about the contract, as if you used to see the contract.
This contract,
you're right. There's nothing stopping him from leaving in the summer, of course.
This is purely my point of view.
Yeah.
I've got no inside. I haven't seen Martin Dubravka's contract. You'll be shocked to know.
I have.
Have you?
No.
But I would suggest that Martin Dubravka has basically future-proofed himself, where he's getting that security of an extra year on his deal at Newcastle. But ultimately, if anyone comes in the summer and can offer him similar terms or better, he will be on his way.
Yeah.
That's the way I think.
No, that's
because
a fair way of looking
everything you were hearing about Martin Dubravka, even a month ago when he was playing and he was happy to stay, end of the season and then see where he goes in the summer. So the fact he signed effectively a new deal to extend his stay for another year sort of contradicts that. So I'd suggest, I wouldn't say...
No, that's a fair point.
That's particularly secured Martin Dubravka's future. It's more future-proofed himself on a personal level, which I think he more than deserves. So
yeah, the point I was making, I was almost saying if you would see out his contract, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing stopping Newcastle from or Martin Dubravka leaving in the summer. So yeah, it's a fair point, and you might be on to something.
We'll see.
Or does it suggest further movement in the goalkeeping we're pure speculating, but Martin Dubravka stays, could it mean that someone else goes? Because as we understand, they're probably going to bring in a goalkeeper at the end of the season.
Yeah. What was you made a good point actually, where it was it was about Martin Dubravka, where Eddie Howe said it was vital they kept hold of Martin Dubravka.
Yes. Yeah. So the first question, Eddie Howe said they couldn't afford to lose Martin, which maybe in terms of the goalkeeper, he has strong performances at the time, but in terms of numbers,
yeah,
the goalkeeping department, they've got more goalkeepers and fit centre halves at the moment. So, but anyway, yeah, that was a minor point I picked up with at the start. But yeah, I mean, we could tell from quite early on in January that Eddie Howe didn't want to lose Martin Dubravka. He got his wish, it was granted, and yeah, I mean, we'll find out next couple of months if Martin Dubravka stays.
I think that's an interesting dilemma for Eddie Howe, the Martin Dubravka and Nick Pope choice before the Carabao Cup final, because Nick Pope obviously has like a monkey on his back from last time. Martin Dubravka as well. He got his medal last time, but obviously will want to play as well, having played such a key role in the two legs against Arsenal for Newcastle to get to this point. And they've also got an FA Cup game as well, where Nick Pope played in the previous round. So how does Eddie Howe manage this situation, and when or does Nick Pope come back in?
Would you put him back in? I'm putting a spot here. Would you put him back in on Sunday?
No.
You wouldn't?
No. But I think there'll be people wanting Nick Pope back in sooner rather than later. There's certainly conversations and rumblings.
It is because
between some of our colleagues debating who should go in. So let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we'll let the viewers decide.
We'll sit on the fence. Yeah. No. We'll get into it. But where do you think Nick Pope comes back in for Newcastle United, or does he come back in at all? Do you keep Martin Dubravka in the team? Cause otherwise, you're just waiting. It's like a ticking time bomb. You're waiting for Martin Dubravka to mess up. Okay, conceded 4 goals on.
Against
Manchester City, is it already over?
Is it almost like the perfect opportunity if you're from an Eddie Howe point of view, you want to get Nick Pope back in the team? Is it the easiest thing to point to?
The quick turnaround in games, Liverpool, and then also Brighton in the Cup. I think something happens. Martin Dubravka doesn't start the next 3 games. That's what I'll say. But I don't change him this weekend.
Right. So you would put Pope in against Liverpool? Because Newcastle... Because I think you're better off having Pope and go when you're getting peppered.
Yeah.
And I think Anfield's a place where you get...
Although Martin Dubravka had a very good game at Anfield last year, despite conceding 4 goals.
No, he was man of the match.
He was.
It was like a 9 out of 10 performance.
Saved the penalty. The expected goals was through the roof, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, no, it was not the highest. It was Newcastle's lowest ever.
At the time, it was the highest ever expected goals recorded. Stat.
Positive times.
Yeah, great.
Maybe I'll keep the Dubravka then.
No, I'd say Nick Pope will probably start the Brighton game and possibly the Liverpool game. I just don't think Martin Dubravka starts the next 3, but I would keep him in the side for Sunday. Although some of our colleagues did suggest that.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Nick Pope could come back.
I think it's probably an interesting dynamic because
he has your new contract, Nick. Martin, get out the team.
Yeah, I'm like sitting on the fence because I don't know. I'm like sort of like open to both. I'm open to keeping him, but then I'm also like, actually, I see the point in bringing Nick Pope back in. So I'm well and truly on the fence.
I think as the best Newcastle have been in the past 12 to 18 months has been with Martin Dubravka in the side. That spell.
When
they've been brilliant, when they've been on top in games, Martin Dubravka, with his ability to play out for the back and not face too many shots, like you said, lends itself well to Newcastle performing at a real top level. The problem is, against the likes of Liverpool and potentially Forest as well, because they've certainly got that in them, when you're going to be facing a lot of shots, Nick Pope, we all know, is a superior shot stopper to Martin Dubravka. But then, if you want to play a bit of football, there's shortcomings in that regard. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah. It's about picking the goalkeeper for the opponent.
Like he comes in. That solves all your problems. Yeah. He's a bit of both.
Yeah, the goalkeeper debate, I don't know. We've asked the question to you guys. See what you guys think.
Let
Because
us
I'm
know.
not sure.
Let us know in the comments. And yeah, a big talking point of the press conference was about two players who used to play for Newcastle but now play for Nottingham Forest. Chris Wood, Elliot Anderson. Two players who had very different careers at Newcastle, but then have since, particularly Chris Wood, flourished at Nottingham Forest. I mean, Chris Wood, 18 goals this season. It's more than Alexander Isak.
I know, one more in the Premier League, isn't
It's
it?
incredible.
It's
And he scored a lot last
Yeah.
season. He scored, I think, 14 last season as well.
that was not the Chris Wood that we see in Newcastle United. That's all I'm saying. I think there's a lot of people out there who might ask the question of regret, but I think you're lying to yourself if you say that at the time you regretted selling Chris Wood because he was third choice at the time.
No, it was
Alexander Isak
good
was come
business
back
at the time.
It was.
And we've said when the sides last met, I think our video was, we're not going to rewrite history over this transfer. Chris Wood was bought for a lot of money at the time for a player of a certain age. It's probably worth that now, let's be honest, even though he's 33. And then sold at a not huge loss after barely scoring. He scored 4 goals in 34, 35 appearances, something like that. So hardly prolific. And then, lo and behold, less than a year later, he's scoring a hat-trick at St James's Park.
No, I think fair play to him. He's found a proper home and he's flourished. And I would probably lend the same argument to Elliot Anderson as well. I don't think Elliot Anderson would be the talked of Premier League player he is at Nottingham Forest if he was at Newcastle, because I don't think he'd be playing. We just spent talking about Lewis Miley coming in and not being able to get in previously because of Joe Linton.
Elliot Anderson
has totally the same problem.
The only reason he got in towards the back end of last season was the Joe Linton injury, probably. And then Joe Linton's now back. You know the qualities of Bruno and Sandro Tonali. So I don't think Elliot Anderson is the player he is right now if he stays at Newcastle. So I think that's a move that has worked out very well for him personally. Although it's quite clear, anytime Eddie Howe speaks about Elliot Anderson, he loathes the fact that Newcastle had to sell him.
It's just that I think it's the emotional side of Elliot Anderson, because the academy graduates spend so much time developing. And imagine Eddie Howe and his coaches spend so much time trying to mould Elliot Anderson into a proper Premier League player. And I think probably by the end of last season, they probably felt there was progress when he did come into the team. And to lose him it's not right, really. We've been over PSR rules. I don't think it's right. And I think Eddie Howe said it as well about incentivising to sell young talents. That's not right at all. And I think that is probably the reason why Eddie Howe still feels probably hurt by losing him. But as I say, I don't think you would have seen Elliot Anderson here that he is at Nottingham Forest. And some players need moves and find certain clubs that help them flourish. And I think Elliot Anderson and Chris would have found that Nottingham Forest and fair play.
No, they've been very good. And on that note, we'll have a word from our sponsors. Here they are. Comply IT Limited. Worrying about disposing of your old IT equipment? Don't be. Comply IT handle everything. Secure collection, detailed tracking, and certified data destruction. That's Comply IT Limited. We've also got Mitigate. Mitigate enhances workplace mental health, helping businesses stay compliant, reduce absences, and unlock higher productivity, creating healthier, happier teams. And of course, our OG sponsors, Four Rivers Financial Planning. Four Rivers Financial Planning offer holistic financial advice for all stages of life, ensuring your plan remains robust and adaptable in the ever-changing world we live in. So those were our 3 sponsors, links in the description below, as well as the Geordie Journal shop. So check that out. Jordan, you're still yet to wear that hoodie.
I've been wearing my hoodie around the house this week.
Oh, well, that's good.
I don't think I could do it in a press conference.
No, that's a shame.
Wearing a top of our own faces on. It would attract unwanted attention.
It probably would, yeah. I'm sure Eddie Howe would enjoy it.
I don't think you realise.
Yeah, he would, actually. But yeah, obviously, like, we started this this video, and where you asked Eddie Howe in the press conference, Nottingham Forest, big game, St James's Park, we're back on Sunday. And at the start of the season, if you said this was a Champions League 6-pointer, you would have been shocked. But fair play to Nottingham Forest. And there's been a few teams, Bournemouth, another one, they've really ruffled some feathers. Did what Newcastle did a few years ago, ruffled some feathers and sitting third in the table.
Yeah, they've been a really good side this season. The only time I've actually properly watched them was against Newcastle as well,
where they weren't very good.
And they weren't very good. But as I say, I think they were quite naive that day. But I think they'll come to St James's Park less naive this time. They showed last season and get a result here. But it's a huge game because there's a lot of talk about the Carabao Cup final. But if Newcastle lose tomorrow, they go 9 points behind Forest. And I think if you've got realistic hopes of qualifying for the Champions League or top 4, I think it's a really, really uphill task if you were to lose tomorrow. So I look at the top 4, and rightly or wrongly, I still say Nottingham Forest is the most likely to drop out. I think Man City will come strong, albeit they had a poor result. I say poor result. They played Real Madrid in midweek, but they didn't turn up. Liverpool are runaway leaders. Arsenal will probably finish second, and then out of that pack, I think it's Nottingham Forest, and then it's anyone under that, where you've got Bournemouth in there, Newcastle, Chelsea. Possibly Chelsea, maybe Aston Villa as well, Fulham. So there's a lot of chasing teams, and when you play these teams in and around you, you've got to get results. And Newcastle haven't been good at that of late. Bournemouth are lost to, Fulham are lost to, Manchester City they're lost to. So they can't keep losing against teams around them, otherwise they'll be nowhere near. So a 9-point gap tomorrow if they lose. Sunday, if they were to lose, would be.
It's hard.
I wouldn't say unthinkable, but it just gives you an impossible task in my opinion.
It would be 12 games to go, 9-point gap to close. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Whereas if you win, 3-point gap, better goal difference, things are looking a whole lot brighter.
I think there is I think people do feel like it's a big game. Because I think this is like...
They're all big games.
I talk about the big game feel. I feel that because of the importance of the final result.
Yeah.
And what's at stake, I think, goes on pause with the big teams that they played against this season. When you get the Arsenal at St James's Park, for example, or at Tottenham, whatever. It's that Manchester. I know they haven't visited yet, but Liverpool. All them big teams come to St James's Park. Although Nottingham Forest aren't the same stature of those teams, the game itself fits in with that, if that makes sense, because it's big in my opinion. They've got to win. I don't think the draws are good enough. I think they've got to get a result.
No, not after the recent performances in the Premier League. I mean, they've lost 3 of the last 4 in the Premier League, which if you want to come in those Champions League positions is going to be tough unless you bounce back. And I think you make a good point about the teams in and around you. You can't be dropping 3 points a pop at every team around your place. This is an important run of games. The Carabao Cup final needs to be, as we said after Man City, just put to bed until the week.
Liverpool won't be thinking about a Carabao Cup final, no? But I mean, it comes from a sort of winners mentality, isn't it? Where it's just game after game. Newcastle probably aren't quite there yet because they haven't won a trophy for so long, and I understand why. From the fan base, why there is a focus on the Carabao Cup final. There's tickets on sale this week. People are still booking. Lots of people book the travel with hotels, whatever, waiting on tickets. So I understand it from the fans' point of view why the Carabao Cup final is still very, very much on the mind. But from a players and coaching point of view, it shouldn't be.
No. But Newcastle, you talk about big games. Newcastle players at St James's Park quite often turn up for the big games. They're quite often able to really perform. The likes of your Isaks, your Anthony Gordon. Isak, I think, has scored in every Premier League game he's played against Nottingham Forest. So that's a boost.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he has.
So that's a boost. He's got a good record against Forest, as Chris Wood has a good record against Newcastle United. So battle of 2 of the best strikers in the Premier League.
Last week it was Erling Haaland versus Alexander. He's now it's Chris Wood versus Alexander. Who'd have thought that, Who'd have thought that?
And we'll be there.
Yeah, we will.
At St James's Park, joined by Liam Kennedy, our third amigo of the Geordie Journos. And if you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell for all your latest Geordie Journos content, and we'll see you at St James's Park on Sunday. Thanks for watching.